My beloved child, give me a moment to speak. This isn't your average day. You just left something that wasn't a coincidence. The fire was meant to purify rather than to destroy. In every flickering light that encircled your trust, I was there, finding out if your roots were strong enough to endure the stress of hardship and the fire of strain. Little one, I saw you stutter through times when the smoke was so dense that you couldn't see where you were going, and all you could hear was my name spoken through quivering lips. I listened to every whisper, and you continued. The earth beneath you dissolved, but you stood when it burned your hope and scorched your tranquility. The purpose of that fire was not to destroy your life. It was intended to burn away anything that was unable to accompany you into the following phase. And I say this to you now, lovingly and urgently. Since the fire has been assigned, the flames have subsided. What you feared would devour you has now made you more refined. You have more strength now than before. Your spirit smells of the power of heaven. You were turned into gold by me, but the enemy hoped that the fire would leave you in ashes. Reliving what has previously happened is not necessary. It's time to get back up from the ruins. Today, I'm pouring new oil where the fire previously burned, so open your spirit. You weren't left behind. You had been forged. Nothing killed you in the fire. It gave you a crown. Not only is the heat coming to an end, it is the beginning of spiritual empowerment. Even though you kept your voice to yourself, I could hear the weight in each quiet step. Though the world didn't see it, I did. It wasn't a season that burdened you. It got ingrained in your breathing and everyday motions. You continued to walk nevertheless. Every day you arose like a fighter in masquerade as a tired spirit, bearing emotional scars like imperceptible chains. And every move you took was noted. I saw you struggle, child, with the weight you believed was only yours to bear, with doubts you couldn't express and with ideas you didn't share. However, I urgently need your attention right now. I made sure to chronicle every single step in my wonderful scroll. I was in awe of every step you took when under pressure. You chose to secretly trust me, even though I could see you were ready to give up. It was a test of how much you could believe in the silence, not how loud you could yell, and you were able to pass. You went by without any recognition, without throngs cheering you on, and without any applause. Since that type of trust wasn't performance, I will reward it. Perseverance was the key. Now I'm taking the burden off. This should be the releasing moment. You no longer have the burden to bear. Your soul's struggles are where I've placed my angels. Your future will not be ruined by the things that broke you. Let your heart be open now. This is your holy liberation. A burden that accompanied you into this season shouldn't follow you out of it. Because it was more than just a hardship. It seemed so intense, so unrelenting, and so personal. The change was a sacred one. Child, this was not about getting by today. What you were developing with each hour that went by was the subject of this. You weren't just getting by in a tough situation. You were being molded in them. Your suffering wasn't all I was witnessing. I was letting it turn into the furnace that forged your fragile faith into iron. It was never only about your ability to persevere. It was about who you were going to be after everything was said and done. I don't waste tests. You know that. You are not allowed to wander through shadows for no reason. The construction plan was a part of every tear, sleepless night, and nervous breath. While you believed that you were only striving to breathe, I was creating something immortal. It is with great urgency that I say this now. Check again. See who you end up becoming. You don't react the same way you used to. You no longer have the same doubts. Your steps are more solid. You have fire in your prayers. Your worship is weighty. The adversary attempted to destroy you, but now you are the very thing. Invincible. There was no punishment in this test. Preparation was the reason, and you let the breaking turn into a building, which is why you passed. Your sincere gratitude is not just a gesture. This is a leap of faith, a seed that will transform your life. Assist people who are in need of hope by sharing my light. Get ready for my heavenly overflow by clicking the Super Thanks button. Don't undervalue the internal transformation that just occurred. Before this test started, you were someone else. Your spiritual growth has advanced to a new level. Additionally, I am releasing the next level of purpose now that you have passed through. Because I utilized what was difficult to make you holy, you are prepared for what lies ahead. Not to scare you, but to reveal the strength of your faith beneath it all. I let the thunder rock your serenity and the winds scream around your tranquility. As you can see, I never questioned you, but I had to let you learn that the roar inside of you could equal the wrath outside. The purpose of the storm was not to drown you. It was intended to make the power I had long since ingrained in you visible. Though trembling, your spirit remained upright despite the wind's attempts to hush you when it seemed like the earth was crumbling and the sky would not reveal light. And whenever fear said, "Stay silent," more loudly, your spirit whispered my name. It was your roar, that whisper. Your trust became thunder in the sky, even though you didn't always yell. It wasn't noise, that roar. It was resistance. You fought against spiritual retreat, hopelessness, and despair, while everything around you begged for submission. Your real triumph was that. Child, there was no need for you to outrun the storm. I was demonstrating to you how your voice could control the chaos in your environment. I waited for you to emerge from the storm, while you waited for me to calm the winds. You defied the clamor with silent, unwavering belief, and your roar was faith wrapped in flames. That's what movies are all about. What shook the enemy was that. Storms don't try weak hearts, you see. They test the hearts I've already fortified. Your foundation became immovable, but you were unaware of it. Not because you were fearless, but rather because you refused to follow fear's guidance. Now, as the final cloud dissipates and the wind finally subsides, I need you to comprehend something very important. This was not a result of the weather. It served as spiritual validation. When the first drop of rain fell, you were someone else. When others fled, you were the one who remained. The one who gave thanks in the midst of the deluge was you. When the lightning struck above your head, you were the one who held on. For that, I designate you as someone who embodies the spirit of rebirth. It's because you persisted, not because you preached. The roar you heard during the storm wasn't borrowed. It came into existence. And now I'm going to use it to shake the same places that sought to keep you quiet. I let the storm happen for this reason. I allowed the noise to reverberate for this reason, not to destroy you, but to remind you of your forgotten dominance. And now, proceed knowing that nothing can stop you in the future if a storm couldn't. Everywhere you looked, there was pressure, like hands gripping your resolve and trying to bend you until you broke. You didn't, though. Under what was intended for you, you did not crumble. You kept your heart open and your back straight, even when your mind was dragging and fear crept beneath your skin, whispering that you were done. I saw you sit through times when silence cried out louder than words, when other people's demands felt like chains, and when your own doubts tore at your faith. However, you resisted the collapse. That wasn't a sign of weakness. It appeared to me to be endurance cloaked in might. The fact that you were holding something larger than anyone realized was demonstrated by each crack that appeared beneath the strain, and with elegance, you held it. Despite your shaky hands, you never dropped the thing I gave you. You had the option to leave when comprehension seemed unattainable, but instead, you ventured farther into the shadows, the uncharted, and the unsaid, and you discovered me there. Additionally, I never kept track of how many times you tripped, how many times you decided not to stay down. I was observing. That's what caused heaven to pause in wonder at your power. When doors slammed, you didn't fold. You didn't give up when treachery unexpectedly happened. When others were praised while you remained concealed, you refused to give up. It was no accident that you resisted. Silently, it was spiritual warfare. You protected your calling in public by making decisions in secret, the things that others would have lost. In prayer, you were covered. Others would have cursed, but you carried it with confidence. And let me assure you that it was all noticed. Every time you appeared to be about to lose it, I was recording it and whispering, "Lord, I trust you." That whisper had a profound effect. The sky was split by that murmur. What keeps you standing is that whisper. Others question how I was able to strengthen your barriers when you felt like you were collapsing. I gave you a boost of strength when no one else was there to support you. It may not have occurred to you at the time, but each time you refused to fold, you were signaling to the adversary that you were not going to be destroyed. He tried everything. He employed people, time, deprivation, and disappointment. Despite all of his stores, your spirit endured. Now, instead of correcting you, I stand before you with affirmation. Something you passed was intended to force others to give up. What you went through was designed to erode your identity. What was meant to force you to give up, you endured. And in ways you can't yet fathom, heaven will honor that type of tenacity. This is an unshakable foundation, and I shall build upon it. I'm going to multiply the strength demonstrated under duress. Your breakthrough will now come from what didn't shatter you. There were times when you felt the want to strike back, just beneath your tongue, ready to retaliate for the harm they caused. When betrayal donned the face of friendship, when false charges attempted to destroy your soul, and when brutality appeared disguised as smiles, you may have used resentment to fight back. You could have used the same poison that was thrown at you to strike, but you chose not to. You suppressed the urge to exact revenge and substituted mercy. That decision, child, reverberated in the heavens like thunder. Others sought to find weakness in your kindness, but I recognized in you the strength of my spirit. You made the right decision by choosing love, not because it was simple. You also paid for it. You lost the satisfaction of instant vindication as a result. You lost out on the comfort of conflict. In conversations that no one else could hear, it cost you the advantage. However, I am genuinely moved by the scent of obedience like that when no one else is around. You weren't delicate. It took strength to bring grace into an environment where offense was rampant. You know how uncommon that is? Without any plans, you loved. You didn't get an apology before you forgave. You made the offer of release before waiting for things to alter. That is the kind of love found in heaven, undeserved, boundless, and unwavering. Each time you muted offense, you said that eternity, not emotion, controlled your spirit. You changed the mood in rooms where people's natural reaction was resentment. You refused to imitate the enemy's strategy, which completely reversed his approach. You also made it possible for me to move in ways that only love can. Don't even consider your gentleness a waste of time. I witnessed your embrace of those who had wronged you. I witnessed you giving your time to those who had stolen from you. When you prayed for those who had never prayed for you, I witnessed it. Out of overflow, you didn't love, you sacrificed for what you loved. For this reason, I am now leaving a spiritual mark on your life that cannot be removed by hatred. Most people never even realize the test you passed. You demonstrate that your heart is developed enough to accept blessings without becoming arrogant. As a result, I am opening doors that were locked by offense. I'm letting go of the rare perplexity that was permitted to persist. What bitterness attempted to block, I am restoring. You didn't simply survive treachery, you used love to purify it. And your weapon now is that love. It will be used to heal areas that others can only touch painfully. Your soul's attempt to be corrupted has turned into evidence that you possess my essence. And since you chose not to erect barriers when you had the option, I will build through you. The small road you selected leads straight to the heart of my promises. On certain days, your entire being cried out to get away from the confusion, the unsolved questions, and the agonizing loneliness of being in the midst of a promise that hadn't yet materialized. When the strain became too intense, you saw others leave, decide to put comfort before calling, and disappear, and you had the option to accompany them. Even though you were held accountable, you had good reasons to give up, compelling arguments for leaving, and a burdened heart that pleaded for help. However, you didn't. You remained. You stayed because you knew I hadn't let you go, not because it was easy. You remained in the relationship, in the task, in the strange location where it seemed like nothing was going to happen. The invisible world was rocked by that obedience, that quiet, pained, uncelebrated obedience. Despite your feet's desire to go, your spirit told me, "No, I'm planted here." And in front of me that decision became a memorial. When staying made you feel insignificant, you stayed. When leaving seemed like freedom, you stayed. When your soul informed you that there was nothing left to cling to, you stayed. You were still holding me, though, even when you were barely hanging on. That's what made you unique. You didn't wait for clues. My voice served as an anchor for you, and I was able to complete what I started in you because you didn't run. Are you aware of how uncommon that is? Unaware that their breakthrough was just a few more faithful steps away, the majority leave over the last stretch. You didn't stop the process, though. You made it through the discomfort of change. You welcomed the unknown. You persevered despite your weariness from unanswered prayers. You were eligible for what is currently being released because of that. You passed more than one test. You resisted a temptation that has caused many people to fail. The need to run away, to become numb, to vanish. However, you opted for presence rather than escape. And now your sacrifice will be rewarded by my presence. It was not a sign of weakness to stay. It demonstrated inner strength, forged in submission. Additionally, I'm amplifying the significance of your endurance in addition to honoring it. Staying preserved not just your path, but also the lives of others who were observing you. In silence, they witnessed your integrity, your private tears. When no one was faithful to you, you were loyal. They also thought they could since you stayed. What you believed to be personal suffering turned into a public seed, and I'm irrigating every area of your life that felt empty due to your refusal to give up. You're not only going to get better, this is your time. Rain is on its way. You clenched your teeth and mumbled prayers, believing no one could hear the trembling in your voice. I gathered all of your tears, even if they vanished into the darkness without anyone seeing. Those beads of emotion weren't squandered. They were priceless statements of your faith in the face of opposition. They didn't show that you were weak. They served as proof of your conflict. They all held the burden of things you couldn't express aloud, things you couldn't tell other people, and things that only I could comprehend. You poured out your grief in moments that seemed invisible, and you carried it all inside with shaky bravery. However, I was present. I lingered in silence. When the world appeared too noisy to hear the whisper of your soul, I knelt down. Because you didn't cry to be seen, I captured every tear as an act of trust, an incense that soared higher than 1,000 shouted prayers. You still thought I was listening, which is why you sobbed. And when the night dragged on without a response, I was counting your cries like treasures as the hush deepened and you began to wonder if your suffering was really important. They were more than feelings. They were a permanent connection incorporated into your narrative. That's why I need you to comprehend this right away. No one ever forgot those cries. In the invisible world, they constructed something. They approved of marvels you haven't yet witnessed. Your suffering wasn't merely endured. It became the soil for the harvest that heaven is currently getting ready for. I've witnessed folks yelling in public and with glee, but I'm struck by how strong you are to have cried in private and yet remained faithful. Because of that, you are now unbreakable. Even though you were crying, you continued to walk. You acknowledged the pain. You still said I was good, but you let it all out in tears. And I'm paying tribute to that. Not your flawlessness, not your capacity to conceal the pain, but your decision to remain by me when it seemed like everything was crumbling. And child, the time for silent sobbing is coming to an end. The reason you cried has passed its divine expiration. Not because crying is evil. An outpouring of peace is replacing the grief that once saturated your pillow. Your delight will now be characterized by the same tears that marked your suffering. This change cannot be undone, and you will mention those times in the dark when your tears baptized the altar of trust rather than your strength. When people ask you how you manage to withstand so much and stay so stable, you are about to be blessed by what almost broke you. What formerly bathed your cheeks in agony will now apply oil to your head. You did more than cry. You made it through the heart-damaging type of crying. Your prize will be rich, multi-layered, and indisputable as a result. Your tears are proof that you survived the fire with a gentle spirit, because heaven remembers what earth forgets. I'm breathing over all the places where grief used to reign, and where tears once fell. A vibrant, bursting life is poised to burst forth. And because you never made your suffering a spectacle, no one was able to see how deep it was. You didn't flaunt your suffering in public or scream for approval. Despite the tempest raging wildly inside of you, you carried yourself through your days with quiet strength, wearing your agony like invisible armor. You trusted me more than you needed pity. Therefore, you never showed it, not because it wasn't genuine. I never ignore the silent battle of such sort. Others evaluated your life based on what they could see from the outside, but I evaluated it based on the weight you carried within the hidden location. You smiled as you entered rooms. You helped people when your own hand shook, even if your spirit was hurting. When you needed anything, you gave. When you were breaking, you offered encouragement. Furthermore, nobody could have realized the true cost to you. However, I was aware. I immediately, urgently declare this to you because of this. Nobody even knew you were taking the test, but you passed it. Heaven stood up because I don't need a spotlight to celebrate your fidelity, but the world didn't clap since they didn't see it. Silently, you marched through flames. You decided to trust without proof. You were standing on unfulfilled promises. You are therefore eligible for this next release. I'm not giving you a reward because of what people think. You are being rewarded by me for your covert obedience. I viewed your calm as discipline, while others thought it signified comfort. I saw your power as the result of persistence, but they thought it meant ease. What was to be private suffering is now being promoted publicly. I want to show you what endurance looks like when it's driven by love for me, not because you seek praise. I'll utilize your perseverance to motivate those who believe they are invisible. Even when no one else is there, I will use your life as a banner to proclaim that God is watching. You're about to enter a time when the outcomes will speak for themselves, and you won't have to justify anything. You went by in silence, and now I'm going to give you unavoidable rewards. I now have unshakable faith in you since you trusted me with your invisible pain. Let them ponder how. Let them inquire as to why. The solution is straightforward. You went through what they had no idea existed, and I was by your side the entire time. Nobody will ever cheer you on for some of your successes since they weren't seen. They didn't witness you struggling in the wee hours of the morning, lying in bed wondering, with fear gripping your mind and knowing at your heart. When you mumbled verses to yourself to keep yourself rooted, they were oblivious to the way your breath trembled. They didn't witness you clenching your hands to prevent yourself from lashing out or leaving discussions in which you had every justification to defend yourself in favor of peace. However, I noticed. I was paying close attention to such moments, since they are the triumphs that will last forever, the ones you won without anyone noticing, giving you credit, or having any witnesses. It wasn't flesh that you were fighting. You were battling for your identity, your sanity, and your soul. When doubt surged like a flood, you stood hard against it, shutting down lies that came cloaked in truth, and fighting through waves of bewilderment. In my country, that kind of conflict earns crowns, but on earth, it doesn't earn medals. The weight of internal conflict did not cause you to collapse. Even when bitterness offered solace, you refused to give in to it. Even when the enemy muttered that your voice was irrelevant, you didn't go into silence. I refer to that as strength, actual strength. It is firmly based in the refusal to give up when no one would have blamed you for doing so. It is neither ostentatious nor boastful, and I want you to fully comprehend this. You allowed me space to work with each invisible victory. I was able to breathe into your next move with each choice to get back up. You were overcoming obstacles that would have crushed someone else, even if others thought you were only getting by. You accompanied me as we traversed valleys they were unaware you had entered. I'm now referring to you as trustworthy because of this. Because you did the right thing without waiting for plaudits. To win a war, you didn't need a stage. Angels are in awe of the legacy you have created with your modest bravery. Therefore, don't gauge your strength based on what other people think of you. Heaven completely respects and understands the weight of what you carried. I'm going to extend my favor on the ground you've taken in quiet. I'm reaching new heights because of what I saw in the shadows, not because of what the outside world observed. You weren't invisible. To me, you were unbeatable. You are a secure haven for my glory because of what you secretly conquered. And the struggle fought in silence will soon pay off in ways that are more powerful than words could ever be. You've been carrying the weight so steadily that you've nearly forgotten what it's like to walk without it. You started to question whether I was still talking because the stillness lasted so long. You have repeatedly inquired, not all the time, but through your sighs, stance, pauses, and ever-lengthening prayer. Like a ticking clock, you carried a question in your heart. Is this my life now, or is this still the test? You didn't question me. The directions felt like they were in a fog as you tried to understand the assignment. And now, I'm answering, clearly, without hesitation, and without ambiguity. It's finished. Eventually, what you've been enduring, hoping for escape from and holding on to, will change. I'm going to declare it finished. This is neither a momentary tranquility nor an emotional high. This announcement is spiritual in nature. The testing season that encircled your days is now over. You won't carry the tension you've learned to tolerate with you into the future. I saw how you handled it. You did stumble occasionally, to be true, but you kept going. You continued to lift your gaze when gravity pushed it down, and you continued to choose me. I want you to know that this isn't just any old moment. You've finished the process that was honing you. You persevered to reach this point at the edge of something new, not merely to live. That persistent pain in your chest, I'm going to lift it. The weight that weighed silently on your chest, I'm taking it off. The ongoing question of whether you're being punished or still in the process, I'm responding to that query with a resounding no more. This was not a form of discipline. Placement was the problem. I was educating your spirit to hear me in ways it had never been able to before, separating you from the outside world and removing obstacles. And I proclaim that the season of refinement is done now that you have developed, and your trust has established itself even in arid terrain. This test will not be extended. I don't need further evidence. I've had enough. I've benefited from your perseverance. When it didn't make sense, you gave up. You have repeatedly relinquished authority. That's why you came here. And I want you to quit living as though you're still being inspected now that it's over. Don't bring up past issues in this new setting. Don't let skepticism overpower my affirmation. Child, it's over, not only because time went by, but also because the goal was accomplished. The work is initiated and completed by me. And I'm saying that this part of your journey is over. The test is over for you. They're trusting you. Already the next page is turning. Additionally, you are not required to be eligible. You did it already. You've already gone by. Breathe now. You no longer need to brace yourself. Waiting for the next hit is not necessary. There won't be another conflict in the future. The payoff is just getting started. It's over, so act as though it is. I didn't bring you here to leave the result up to speculation. I didn't watch you go through the internal struggle, the quiet, and the stretching, just to give you doubt at the end. Torment was not the purpose of the test. It was supposed to show you what was already inside of you. Long before the fire ever reached your path, I put that there. And now that the last minute has come, you must hear this clearly. The result is not ambiguous, postponed, or contingent on external approval. It's decided, settled, and entirely in your favor. Every choice you made to act honorably when it seemed easier to compromise was recorded. Every silent surrender, when you had the option to resist, was noted. Every instance in which you opted to serve without acknowledgement was counted. These were not arbitrary deeds of compliance. They were the proof that heaven needed. You didn't merely make it through, you went by changing. Being flawless was not intended for you. You were supposed to be dependable. It's possible that you felt like you stumbled more than you flew. What I observed, however, was a heart that would not give up. You were stretched, seduced, misinterpreted, and even disregarded. However, you continued to walk. What I honored was that. As a judge, parent, and king, I now declare the outcome and give my approval. Leon preferred. This test's conclusion is not influenced by what the general public thinks or how other people evaluated your adventure. It is founded just on my opinion, my grace, and your unreserved tenacity. You are not leaving this test in the same state that you entered it. You are exuding an authority that comes only from perseverance. I am opening up previously hidden things to you because I'm certain that your heart won't abuse what I'm going to let go of. Favor is resting on your name because you persevered through what most others would have turned away from, not because you requested it. Blessings are reserved just for this time, the type that can only be unlocked following the conclusion of testing. And I'm telling you this quickly. Don't back down. Never question your deservingness. Don't allow outdated myths to dissuade you from enjoying this newfound freedom. I have already signed the results with my blood and my vow after the test is over. Act as though the fight is over. Feel as though the result has changed. Talk as if the chains have been removed, because they have. There are no question marks at the end of this chapter. It concludes with victory. Now, my kid, raise your head. The test is finished. It's your new task. The attention never shifted to you, and there was no applause. The benefits that others seek have never reached you. You have also seen others run ahead while carrying less weight, louder cheers, and fewer injuries. You wonder whether you missed something, whether you weren't fast enough, loud enough, or visible enough. You were never running their race, though, kid. I didn't call you to entertain large audiences or construct altars of approval in order to gain popularity. When no one was looking, I called you to go for a walk. When my voice didn't make sense, they followed it. To stay on narrow pathways when it appeared easier to take bigger ones. And you've done precisely that. The world has a different definition of victory than I do. They keep track of followers. I keep track of faith steps. They give forth visibility. Obedience is rewarded by me. You not only passed, but you triumphed by the standards of heaven. You put my will ahead of your own comfort. You made no concessions for applause. You wouldn't make the truth any less light. Even if it meant being alone, you put me first. I saw you turn down something that would have improved your reputation but compromised your morals. I saw you build without bragging, love without acknowledgement, and serve without cameras. That's the kind of faith that causes angels to rise and demons to tremble. You weren't forgotten. You were saved. I kept you hidden to safeguard something valuable, not because you weren't worthy. You didn't waste your treasured secret seasons. I now want you to realize the truth that the enemy does not want you to know. You've already triumphed. I've set a crown on your spirit, not because the world bestowed one upon you. You stayed loyal to me while no one else was around, not because you proved yourself to others, That is the pinnacle of victory. Status is not what you pursued. You sought to give up. Everything that was constructed behind closed doors is now about to be acknowledged in public. I'm setting up times when people who disregarded you will be forced to admit the impact of my glory on your life. However, don't allow their opinion to determine your value. Now keep in mind that you were victorious before they even realized it. Recognition is not the prize. My presence, my validation, and my tranquility are the prize. And no one can take that, child, and no platform can give it to them. Therefore, raise your gaze to promise rather than people. Being the first didn't win you anything. You prevailed because you were loyal. Despite its painful twists and jagged edges, the path you took was never in vain. Each season when answers were withheld, every moment of uncertainty, it was all leading up to this point. Each time you were on the verge of a breakthrough, just to be confronted with more waiting. Furthermore, Heaven's court is not deliberating. I want you to know that. Throughout the pages of your process, the last word has already been said. One word that I wrote cannot be removed. Demonstrated. This stamp isn't obtained via performance or perfection. It wasn't given to you because you never questioned me or because you always felt strong. No. The instant you decided to continue showing up with a surrendered heart when quitting whispered through your fatigue, this approval was sealed. It was inked when you called me faithful despite standing on unfulfilled promises. You didn't have to be perfect for me. I needed your willingness. You were too. The only evidence I needed was your affirmative response to me when everything else indicated no. This endorsement is more than a simple compliment. It has been approved by God. It implies that doors that previously opposed you will now open naturally. It indicates that you can now occupy what earlier appeared to be protected territory. It indicates that you are now receiving assignments that have been waiting for the proper person. Even though you might not notice it yet, more than just your endurance was being put to the test. It was your willingness to take on more than you had anticipated. I can now declare with complete authority that you are prepared. Your moments of dread do not disqualify you. The times you cry do not disqualify you. Your journey's evaluation by others does not disqualify you. Every human viewpoint, internal uncertainty, and adversary allegation is superseded by my acceptance. It's written in flames by me. I have etched it into your destiny's chronology and have given my approval. No man can take it back. You no longer have to aim for acceptance. You've already got it at the top. Now, walk as if you have received the King's confirmation. Proceed with the assurance that you are not defined by this experiment. You were exposed. And I'm proud of the person who rose above the ashes. It's your pivotal moment. The test is recognized as complete in Heaven's record, not because it appears different yet, accepted, cherished, and always whole. Your vocabulary was accepted. I never left, even when it seemed like the heat would never go away and doubt's shadows would dance at your feet. You interpreted the quiet as a sign of separation. You interpreted the absence as the lack of relief. But in those blazing hours, child, I was closer than I've ever been in peace. If you feel that Jesus Christ has brought light and hope into your life, then come join us on this sacred journey. Subscribe to the channel and experience His love, peace, and blessings every day. In Jesus' name, amen.